On tonight's panel, the Home Office Minister, Chris Philp. He was number 2 in the Treasury to the then Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng in Liz Truss's government. He was also previously a Minister for tackling illegal immigration. For Labour is Peter Kyle. He's been an MP for 7 years, and for the past year, he's been Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. He's also spoken publicly about his struggles with dyslexia in the past. Editor-in-Chief of the world-renowned magazine The Economist is Zanny Minton-Beddoes.
Fucking hell, she was on like 4 weeks ago. What? Why? I'm so sick of people from fucking The Economist and The Spectator.
The most recent edition has a picture of the Prime Minister under the headline, Reasons to be Cheerful. Well, we'll see about that. Lord Stuart Rose is a Conservative peer and has vast experience in the world of business and retail. He's been CEO at Burton, Argos and M&S, among others, and is now chairman of Asda, the UK's 3rd biggest supermarket. And George the Poet is an award-winning artist, rapper and podcaster. He's a well-known social and political commentator, often using his distinctive musical poetry.
Okay, so we have, like, 3 rightoids, someone from Labour, and then a celebrity. Brilliant, great. No left-wing political commentators allowed ever. He did look like someone from France. At least QT hasn't sunk so low like GB News and Talk TV where they get other presenters on as guests. True.
Good evening, welcome.
Although at least Talk TV and GB News don't copyright claim me.
To our panel, welcome to you all here from Horsham. Very good to see you. And of course, welcome to you at home. Do join in Question Time in the usual way on social media at BBC Question Time. Let's hear what you've got to say. And before we take our first question, just a reminder that we are now live on the BBC iPlayer at 8 o'clock every week, in case it's too late to stay up and watch us after the news on BBC One. So live on the iPlayer at 8 o'clock. Right, let's take our first question, shall we, from Alex Bubb.
Is it now too late to avoid a long recession next year?
Well, as we've heard today, the Bank of England is warning that we could be facing the longest recession since the Great Depression. Stuart?
Sadly, it is too late. The recession is here. There's been some debate about whether we're in a recession or not, but we are. And you only have to look around you about what's happening. I'm afraid we're going to have a very, very tough 2023.
Oh, excellent. I mean, of course he's wildly anti-Corbyn. That's why he's in the shadow cabinet.
Some of us who are in business will be looking to do our plans for next year for our businesses. If your business year end is at the end of December or your business year end is at the end of March, we're looking at that. And I've been having such a meeting today on a company that I chair.
I mean, possibly is Samson. Unfortunately, I don't know who he is. But he's like, I guess he's more of an activist than a political commentator. But I guess if you're doing activist political commentary, then that probably should really count. Just, there's never any kind of leftist politicos on, right? When was the last time Ash Sarkar or Owen Jones was on Question Time? That's my dream, right? Becoming so big on YouTube that I get invited on Question Time to talk shit about politics.
And if you look at the headwinds of costs coming through on things like carriage, insurance, freight, cost of goods through the factory gate, I'm afraid inflation is here. It's here to stay. It will have an effect on people's propensity and ability to spend. And of course, we've got the budget coming, and the budget is going to be bad news.
And as chair of Asda, are you noticing already your shoppers tightening their belts?
Well, listen, it's not a secret. We run a survey which is independently run for us by one of the big audit firms, PwC, and 20% of all households in the UK, they're not exclusively Asda customers.
There's still competition. There's still a competition where you get to win a spot on the Question Time panel as like a random person. I'd apply the shit out of that. That'd be so much fun.
20% of all households in the UK are running a £60 a month deficit.
I'm just literally going to be hammering away at we need more SOEs because that would be able to reduce taxes by generating revenue for the Exchequer. That's what I would just be. I'll be there saying that to answer every single question. What's your opinion on abortion? No justice. My opinion is that we need more state-owned enterprises to be able to generate revenue for the Exchequer.
That's a shocking number, but it's true.
Chris, the question is it too late to avoid a long recession next year? I mean, obviously, we've got the government's statement or budget, really. Might as well call it by what it is, on the 17th of November. Is there anything that we can expect that's going to make things any better?
Well, I think Stuart is right to say that we are in difficult economic circumstances. Andrew Bailey made the same point today when he announced interest rate change. Of course, this isn't unique to the UK. We see similar issues around the world.
But Andrew Bailey did also talk about a UK premium and the UK's position standing being damaged by the Truss government. And of course, you were a great supporter of that government. I have to say, you're here. You were number 2 in the Treasury. You presume you're horrified by what the government is suggesting now?
No, look, I think what Rishi Sunak is doing since being elected as Prime Minister is trying to get the ship onto an even keel. There was obviously a lot of market turmoil a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying that if we'd have had like a half-decent Labour government during the coronavirus and coming out of the coronavirus, like the main bit of the coronavirus pandemic, right? If we'd have had a proper Labour government, we wouldn't be facing down a recession right now. But because our current government are so focused on eviscerating public services, eviscerating investment from on behalf of the state, there is no chance to be able to avoid the recession, which we would have done if we had a different government. I think that's a reasonable way of looking at it.
That has thankfully largely settled down. Things like the currency and the government bond yields are back to pretty much where they were before the mini budget. As I say, there are global
that budget
challenges.
That you were a large part of.
Well, I mean, I wasn't taking the decisions, but I was in the government at the time.
Well, you were
right.
number 2 in the Treasury.
Yeah, I was in the government, that's right. I wasn't taking the decisions, but I was there, you're right. These are global challenges. We've seen Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan talk about a recession in America. The IMF, just a short while ago, said a third of global economies are going to suffer a recession. So, we are in difficult circumstances here and elsewhere in the world. The question is, what can we do about it? And there are some things the government, both the immediately previous government and indeed Boris Johnson's government, have done to try and make things a bit easier for households. I mean, Stuart mentioned the pressure a minute ago. So that's things like, the energy price guarantee to stop people suffering those £5,000 or £6,000 energy bills that we feared.
There's a massive issue, though, when your plan to curb inflation through an energy price guarantee generates more inflation because you've inflated the currency naturally by injecting extra of it into the economic system, right? That's a huge issue because you're not taxing the windfall profits. The fact that more money is going into the economy, but you're not taking any money out of the economy through taxation, means you're going to get increased inflation, right? Like that's literally like MMC, like volume 1.
We can expect.
Well, let me come. So the 5p of fuel duty, raising those national insurance thresholds to put an average of I think £300 or £400 in people's pockets, increasing national minimum wage a few months ago by 7%. So these are all things which
I agree, JDM, that energy being more expensive is good because it would deter usage, but I think that we're kind of close to a point of inflection where it's expensive enough to deter usage, but it's also cheap enough that most people can afford it. I would actually rather just make it stratified, right? The unit price is X cheap up to a certain point that you're using it per person, per household. Once you've then used that up, you then be put onto a higher tariff. I think that'd be a fairer way than just... because then everyone gets a base level of usage out of it without taking the piss. Once they start taking the piss, then you put them onto a higher tariff. I think that'd be... I don't know how you'd do that, how you'd properly fucking understand who's using which particular amount of energy. I get that, right? But I think that'd be an interesting way of doing it, if you could, theoretically. Yeah, 100% JDM, yeah. Making sure that there's a base level that poor families and average families get access to, whilst deterring people who, they're growing like weed farms or running Bitcoin mining servers.
Which are going to help people, in these difficult circumstances. As far as the budget or the autumn statement is concerned, obviously, I don't know what's going to be in that. We'll find out in a couple of weeks' time. What I think it will do is make sure we are being responsible as we face these new circumstances. And we've seen Rishi Sunak as Chancellor a year or two ago get this country through COVID in unbelievably difficult circumstances. And the fact we've got the lowest unemployment now for about 48 years, I think is testament to the way that he steered us through that crisis. And I think he can steer us through these difficult global economic circumstances that we face today.
So why are you shaking your head at all that, Zanny?
So I'm shaking my head because, Stuart, I completely agree with Stuart, the recession has already begun. We would have been in tough circumstances anyway because of the big shock that's come from global events. The inflation, the US has very high inflation, the war in Ukraine... And
yeah, they're heating their swimming pool or their stables, by any chance?
Prices, but frankly, it was made much worse by the incompetence of the Truss administration. So you have a, very spectacularly bad...
It's also just been made worse by 12 years of a Conservative government, right? Like, we would not be facing down the recession if we'd have this much time of a Labour government. Even a shitty Labour government, even fucking Blairism Reloaded, would have meant that we'd have at least had enough theoretical investment to be able to make sure the economy was strong enough to withstand this. But because you've had so many years of Tory government, there's just no way we're ever going to avoid this shit.
3 weeks have made Britain's situation much worse. Now, yes, the Bank of England, we have got a dullness dividend. We've got competent people in Downing Street, but competence should be a requirement, not an ambition for a government. And now we've got competence, hopefully, but we've got this budget, coming up, and that budget is basically going to be allocating pain. we're going to see tax increases and spending cuts that are bigger than they would have had to have been if we hadn't had the stuff that happened in September. And they're going to make the recession worse because we're going into a recession anyway. Interest rates are going up further, probably not as much as the markets were expecting, but they are going up further. They're going up further because they have to get inflation down. And all of this is made more difficult by this huge gaping fiscal hole that we have, for which we have to raise taxes and cut.
I heard about that, JDM. Yeah, I don't know exactly the details, though.
Spending, all of which is going to be really hard because things that are politically, the sensible ways to cut spending are bad for the economy, and the things that are politically somewhat easier, or economically sensible, are politically more difficult. And so it's just going to be really, it's going to be really tough. Yes, the fact that this government has said that it won't raise VAT, national insurance, or income tax when we've got the scale of challenge we have is barking mad. We should be considering all manner of things, and similarly
50p in the pound, let's go. But the issue isn't 50p in the pound. The issue is dividend taxing dividend payouts and taxing capital gains. But they don't want to do that because that's their voter base and their donor base.
We should be considering phasing out the triple lock. The scale of the challenge on pensions, the scale of the challenge we have mean that all this stuff has to be looked at, and the problem is worse because of what happened in September.
Right, lots of hands. You were all sitting there, none of you with your hands on. They suddenly all shot up. So the woman at the very back.
I think the most vulnerable members of our society in this recession are children. There are already 800,000 children not eligible for free school meals but living in poverty in the UK. How will our society protect our most vulnerable members through what is to come?
OK, we'll come to that.
Because the government doesn't give a shit about you because you can't vote. Kids can't vote, so they can go fuck themselves. That's how Labour governments work, how literally every political party works. They do not care about you, but if you cannot vote for them, simple. If you're not a swing voter even, right? And children cannot be swing voters because they can't fucking vote.
Woman there in the blue top.
With the current crisis and us going into recession, should it be right that Liz Truss or any ex-PM still gets the allowance year after year for placing the UK in the economic mess that we're in?
Chris?
So I think the allowance is supposed to pay for office costs. But I've got to say, having been in office for like 45 days or whatever it was, it does seem, frankly, pretty unreasonable to be claiming it. And I hope she doesn't.
OK. The man there in the check shirt.
Just wondered how putting up interest rates helps.
Well, yeah, true. Universal childcare, 100%, obviously.
Inflation. People haven't got money in the first place, and now you're putting more money on loans for businesses, for households. How does that help when we've got no money in the first place?
Because, of course, the idea is that it will deter people from spending.
But also universal free school meals, right? Again, another nonsense problem, which is means testing being the fucking cornerstone. Every single government policy has to be means tested because liberals just cannot understand the difference between them getting angry about someone getting something they feel they don't deserve and the efficiency of not having to bother engaging in the means testing process. I do not give a shit if rich people's kids get free school meals. I just do not care as long as poor people's kids get free school meals. The easiest way of doing this is by giving everyone the fucking free school meals. Just give them the food. It's not expensive to give everyone a free meal, right? You cook in bulk anyway. If rich people's kids and poor people's kids are mixing together in school regardless by banning private schools, which you should do, then it doesn't matter. Just the food is made in bulk. Everyone gets served the same shit, right? If rich people's kids want to go out and buy food for themselves, it's not the school food, they can fucking do that. There's no reason not to have free school meals for everybody because means testing is garbage. Just stop.
That's right. So how does that create a good economy?
Peter, what would Labour do in this situation?
Well, I think the points people are making are really important about how this is impacting people. We understand how it's impacting businesses and jobs. We understand from economists that actually this recession, come to the original question, it is now probably here with us, and it's going to be a long and very painful recession. But we have to understand that for the last 12 years, it has left such a lack of resilience in families and in households and in people's finances. 20% of people in the UK have no savings at all. 44% of people in Northern Ireland, for example, have no savings at all. And just in the last few weeks, and as a result of the catastrophic decisions that were made in Downing Street and being paid for by workers up and down the country, people are paying an extra £500 on their energy costs. People are paying another, if you live in this part of the country, £695 on their mortgage. This is a Tory premium on mortgages that is being paid for up and down our country by 202 million people whose mortgages are due to expire at the moment. So the thing we have to do is...
What about the renters who will have that cost passed on to them by landlords? Fuck off about mortgage holders. I do not care. You have a mortgage. You're in an infinitely better position than any renter could ever be in. And they're going to be paying exactly the same shit, except only to cover the cost of their landlord's mortgage. Can we fucking talk about renters for one goddamn motherfucking second?
Stabilise.
Also, I understand. That was a bit hyperbolic. People who have mortgages, especially mortgages for their own owner-occupiers, and it's their only house, right? I'm in that position too, right? I get that increasing mortgage payments, that's going to theoretically, you know, massively impact your cost of living. I get it. It's horrible. I just dislike this narrative where renters don't fucking exist and no one cares about renters, and they never get talked about in any of the political sphere because they're not a swing political group. They're all voting Labour or Lib Dems. I mean, most probably Labour at this point because Lib Dems have decided to fuck them over as well with their most recent policy. Almost all of them voting Labour. So there's just no point in either of the parties doing anything to care about them. And it's crazy that the Tories are the only party looking at changing rules for renters, and they were pissing off landlords months ago with a rental reform bill, right? It was the Tories knew that they would lose they were hemorrhaging votes because renters were getting their standard of living squeezed so far by horrendous policymaking that they decided to throw them a fucking bone, right, to try and get people squeeze people across to the right hand side of the aisle who are possibly amenable to on a policy platform. But at this point, they're all so essentially embedded in their own political worldview, because you would be as a renter because you're the lowest rung of society at this point, that no one mentions them in this whole fucking conversation. We've had literally like a month, 2 months of people talking about the issue with increases in mortgage payments because of the increase in interest rates, because of the impact of the fiscal event, right? And when has anybody or any of these panels mentioned the word renter? 0 times. I have not seen anybody mention the word renters, apart from me watching the screen angrily shouting about them. It's utterly infuriating.
The economy. That means having a plan, which we have, means all of our plans and policies are fully costed, so the markets can see where the money's coming from and how we're going to pay for plans.
So just well, I'll give you an idea. Exactly, because what we're talking, what we're being softened up for. What we're hearing is that, or what's coming out of the Treasury to the newspapers and to the broadcast media is we're all going to have to face tax hikes of some sort, and we have to rein in spending. So what would Labour do?
Well, your question is, how will Labour solve...
We do not have to rein in spending. Stop manufacturing people's consent, you Tory cunt, Fiona. Stop it. This is not the unbiased BBC that we're told should be impartial. Oh, they're getting happy about being able to spread the news of Boris Johnson winning the when not being running for Prime Minister again. Instant ban, instant removal from the platform for breaking impartiality, saying that we have to have spending cuts, and Corbyn's got communist broadband, and would he nationalise sausages, or Rishi Sunak as Superman, or trans women are forcing lesbians to have sex with them, or having to defend against migrants at the border, or portraying Corbyn as Russian or Lord Voldemort. None of these things trigger the impartiality alarm, but someone expressing glee at the fact they get to be able to, break the news that Boris Johnson's not running for Prime Minister anymore. Suddenly that is the point at which we have the impartiality guidelines get pushed over. The BBC is a fucking disgrace at this point in their current affairs output, at how brazenly politically motivated they are and politically biased they are.
The catastrophic hole in our finances caused by the Tory party. We will have to stabilise the economy and then move to a plan that grows it. We have both of those things. Firstly, in terms of actually getting people supported, let's take hungry school kids. We have a plan which is based on taxing and closing the loophole for non-dom status, so people who earn their money abroad but live here and don't pay any taxes here. We would close that loophole and we would fund, so every primary school kid can have food before going into school. We'd also use some of that money, so we would double the number of doctors being trained, and triple the number of nurses being trained, and quadruple the number of midwives being trained. This is the sort of thing, the plans that are going to tackle the challenges we have that are fully funded. Now, Rishi Sunak, he put up the national insurance tax, so he is funding hard-working people, whilst himself and his family is avoiding tax by using the loopholes that we seek to close. Fully funded, tackling the challenges we have, then we will move forward.
His wife, who did have non-dom status, is now paying tax in the UK.
His family and he himself has avoided paying the taxes for which, look, he says...
Yeah, the only reason that Akshata Murthy became domiciled in the UK is because she got found out. That's not the same as someone doing the right thing. That's someone wanting to save face because otherwise they would be fucking castigated for it, right? That is not an argument for saying that she's done the right thing. That's an argument for saying that she got caught out doing the wrong thing. She doesn't get brownie points for not doing bad things, right? It's like the Chris Rock segment. Well, I take care of my kids. You're supposed to take care of your kids.
That he will make eye-wateringly difficult choices. It just seems to me that none of the choices he is making affect him himself. I want to see a government that will actually put its money where its mouth is and put people first.
The woman there in the white top and the glasses.
It was only to the comment on the triple lock, because I just feel that the pensioners for a long time have really suffered. There's been no return on their investments because the interest rates have been so low.
oh, the poor return on the investments for the pensioners. Oh, the demographic that's richer than everyone who actually works for a living right now. Oh, oh no, I'm so sad about you. Like, obviously, that's pretty mocking of pensioners, right? But the vast majority of pensioners in this country are incredibly wealthy in comparison to working people right now, especially working young people. There is a contingent of pensioners who do not have pensions from their job. That loads of them did get lucrative pensions in the 70s and 80s, right? 60s, 70s, 80s, right? Who don't have that, and they're incredibly poor, and these people need all the help that they can get. I'm not saying that they shouldn't, not in a single sense, right? But the triple lock is most vehemently defended by a bunch of incredibly fucking entitled old people who don't understand the fact that they are gratuitously well off in comparison to people who are actually currently working to build the wealth of civilization, right? Like, I'm sorry, like, you don't get to continue talking about how amazing the triple lock pension should be for you when, I'm sitting here working, making a fucking half of what you earn for sitting on your ass being a pensioner.
And that was promised in order to try and help pensioners keep abreast of everything. So there comes a point where they keep taking the brunt of it, isn't it? Time that they've served their dues, they've put a lot of money in over the years, that they deserve to be looked after better than they are.
Okay, and the woman there in the striped t-shirt.
Why doesn't the government go for what is politically popular and put another tax, a windfall tax on the energy companies?
Right, true. And the man there in the spotty tie.
Just a comment that was made on the point of tripling the number of nurses and other professionals. Quite frankly, if the wages are not going to go up, people aren't going to go into those professions. The positions can be created.
See, huge support for raising nurses' pay. Will fucking Ken Stonger, Casey, Sir Ken Stonger, will he actually go ahead and back it? Of course he fucking won't, because he's a fucking ratbag.
If the wages are not there, in line with inflation, then people aren't going to want to go into those professions, so it's no good saying that the numbers will be tripled.
OK. George, I haven't come to you yet. What's your response to this question? Is it too late now to avoid a long recession next year?
I think the anxiety that a lot of people in the country are feeling is that we're heading for another round of austerity. We're hearing already talks about cuts to essential services, which have seen us through a pandemic and, as the gentleman just said, involve the labour of so many decent, hard-working people who are unrecognised, uncelebrated throughout this difficult period. And no, I actually agree with the point that Peter was making in terms of the double standard of government talking about sacrifices that we will collectively make when all the measures seem to be avoiding the obvious, taxing the people that need to be taxed to raise the revenue that will actually make a difference to how this country weathers the forthcoming storm.
So what you're saying, you want to tax, put more tax on people who are better off?
Yeah, more tax on people who are better off. And that's it's like talking to a brick wall with this government, but it's
well, you've got a member of the government here. Talk to Chris.
Yes, Chris. Tax the people that need to be taxed.
Well, let me try and answer the question.
Oh, so you didn't want to tax the better off more. You want to tax them less. So that got reversed.
You've got to be very careful. If you push any tax rate too high, you risk obviously driving people away. Some people have a choice about where.
If someone show me evidence of capital flight, I'll happily then change my opinion on this. But no one has ever shown me any reliable evidence that capital flight happens in any large capacity.
Where they work, so you've got to be careful you don't push it too far. The top 1% of earners earn about 12% of all income. They pay about 28% of all income tax. So 1% of
more of that. Give us more tax.
People paying 28% of all tax. So that is quite progressive, richer people paying a lot more.
But as I've said 1,000 times, and I will say again, not for the first time in this very segment that I'm recording right now, right? If you want to have more money in the exchequer to pay for public services, you do not have to get that from taxation. You can get that through generating revenue through state-owned enterprises. But it's funny how they all got sold off by the Tories and now we have to pay higher tax. Imagine if we were still getting revenue from British Airways, British Telecom, British Petroleum, British Energy, right? British Rail. Imagine if all of those things were then revenue generators for the state, right, rather than just revenue generators for the shareholders of the private equity firms that they got sold to in the 1980s and 90s, right? Imagine if that was the case and how much less tax we would have to pay to fund our public services, right? There's a reason why our tax rates at the moment are so high, is because we understand, as our population doesn't, our population expects a certain level of our public services, and true, they should do, right? But the exchequer has to raise taxes to be able to support those things for the expectation. And Conservatives, obviously, Rishi Sunak understands that, and he's happy to put the taxes up, which is, reasonable. Obviously, he wants to make spending cuts as well, which is bad. But nevertheless, right, this is a consequence of the removal of the social democratic consensus without people's expectations of what the state should or shouldn't do changing in response to neoliberalism, right? That's why PFI's happened.
Conversely, at the bottom end of the spectrum, people earning lower wages, we've successively lifted the thresholds. So now the first £12,500 of income, you don't pay a single penny of income tax, you don't pay a single penny of national insurance. And that obviously disproportionately benefits people on lower incomes, exactly as George was quite reasonably suggesting.
But tax thresholds have now been frozen.
We've also, so those thresholds were when we came into office a few years ago.
And they say they're the country of they're the party of patriotism, right? Of British spirit, right? Yeah, all those companies mentioned were previously British Airways, British Petroleum, British Telecom, British Rail, British Airways, all that shit. Who are they owned by now? Fucking random other private equity firms from other countries and shit like that. Our ferries are owned by the fucking Saudi Arabian monarchy. Their private investment fund, right? How patriotic is that? Where you sell off the theoretical economic crown jewels of this country to foreign private investment firms? That's not very patriotic, really, is it? But I'm sure the shareholders who live in fucking the United States or God knows which country, fucking Egypt or whatever, I'm sure they're very happy that those all got sold off.
6,500, they've been doubled, which is way, way higher than inflation. We've also massively increased the minimum wage, introduced by Labour, but massively increased under this government, again, to help people who are working hard, struggling to make ends meet. It was £5.93 an hour.
Did he really need to say that he was increasing the minimum wage, but it was made by Labour? Really weird. Like, it's really just offering up something on a plate for that. That makes more sense. I'm happy you did, though. It's true.
When Labour left office, it's now £9.50 an hour. It's getting on for doubling. I'm pretty sure it's going to go up a lot more in the near future as well. So those are all things. I mean, you're making a fair point, George. We're trying to lift people out of tax on lower incomes entirely and put up the minimum wage to make sure people who are working hard, doing the right thing, actually earn a decent wage.
I have a question. You said you've got to be careful how much you push people in terms of high income earners, and you don't want to chase away the money that they might bring to this country. How much do you think you have done? Like, when you consider that the top 10th of earners in this country, the gap between them...
Most businesses who don't want to trade in the UK anymore are not moving because of high taxation. I mean, they are moving because of high taxation, but not on profits, right? They're not they're not leaving because of high taxes on profits or high taxes on dividends or any of that shit. They're leaving because of business rates. Like, business rates need to be stratified so that they are fairer on small business as well, to make it easier for them to compete, and that would bring more businesses in. And they also are finding it difficult to compete because of energy costs, right? In the UK, it's 13 pence per kilowatt hour of electricity for industrial uses, right? In Finland, it's only 6 pence per kilowatt hour. It's literally more than double the price of being a business in the UK to pay for energy than it is in Finland. So why would anybody do business in the UK, for example, or have their headquarters in the UK, when the kilowatt hour of the price of energy to be able to run those, or to run a manufacturing plant in the UK, for example, is so much higher here than it is elsewhere? It's much better value for you, regardless of even labour costs, if you just moved it overseas to get access to cheaper energy.
And the middle 10th is now, I think, 1.2 million per adult. You know, there's been an expansion of wealth inequality.
In terms of what they earn, or in terms of their assets? Or?
It is inequality, I think.
Right. So, yeah, how much do you feel like you guys have been holding these guys to account?
So I think, income inequality, I think what you're asking about, has been, it has gone up and down a bit, but it's been broadly constant over the last few years. On that top tax rate point, so say the top 1% are paying 28% of all income tax. We've got to make sure people that have a choice about where they locate choose to locate in the UK. So I used to be technology minister, which is, we've got a booming tech sector, which is a real strength for our country. But a lot of tech businesses, they're internationally mobile. They don't have to come here. They go to Singapore, South Korea, the USA, anywhere really they can locate. We've got to make sure they choose to locate here, create jobs here, pay taxes here. So it's quite a delicate balance to strike. And it's obviously a matter of debate.
But they obviously don't choose to come here and make jobs here. There's no reason to do it. It's expensive to do business here, even outside of taxation. It's expensive to do business here because we just fucking cut economic ties with a gigantic trading bloc across the water. So exporting to these countries is bad, even though the pound has tanked recently, right? Oh, God, just the economic nonsense. Oh, I hate it. Hate it.
Draw it, but when the top 1% are paying 28% of income tax, they'll make a pretty big contribution.
Can I just weigh in and sort of pull all of these really good points that have been made together? We have a huge gap to fill, and we're going to have to fill this gap at a really difficult time. And I think the principles that you lay out are absolutely right. People with the broadest shoulders, people most able to pay, should pay disproportionately more. So the first question, is how much do you close this gap by cutting spending, and how much do you close it by putting up taxes? The last time we had Osborne austerity, 3/4 of it was done by cutting spending, with, I think, catastrophic consequences. So the fact that this time there is talk
even the magazine for British millionaires, as named by Lenin, The Economist, even they are telling you that Osborne-era austerity, the guy who is now advisor to Jeremy Hunt, no less, as being told by the Economist, the enemy of Lenin, that he's being too right-wing.
That it'll be a bit more even, more coming from tax, and probably equal or something like that is more sensible. Within spending, the reason I talked about thinking about phasing out the triple lock, and I agree with you there, pensioners have had a tough time in this country, but in the last 10 years, actually, the state pension has grown faster than average earnings. So, you know, it's going to be difficult all round, and it's going to be parceling out pain. Everyone's going to have to pay something. I think the lady who made the point about, you know, kids in poverty, I completely agree. They are the most vulnerable. That's why I think universal credit should be protected, because these are the people who are really, really being hit hard right now. On the tax side, it's great to shoulder more for people at the very top, but it doesn't raise you enough money. Ditto windfall taxes. I agree, there's a case for expanding windfall taxes. It's not going to get you the amount of money you need, which is why I came back to something like the income tax. We're going to have to do something of all of this. There isn't like a single silver bullet that can solve this.
Danny, you're absolutely right. I mean, listen, you're all...
Yes, there is a silver bullet. It's called nationalisation, baby. It's really good if we did that.
All very intelligent people, but you all run your own budgets and you all know what's happening. Put this a different way. We've got an illness, and we've been to see the doctor, and the doctor says you're ill. The doctor says you're going to have to take some medicine, and the medicine's not going to be very pleasant. But if you take the medicine for a period of time and you take it early, you'll get cured and you'll get better. The longer you leave taking the medicine, the worse you're going to get, and the pain's going to get more unpleasant. So it's quite a simple fact of life. All of us ought to be
Very true, Miss Hire. 100%. Yep. Tories just want money and power. They want to be. They claim to be good with money, but what they really want is your money. They're not motivated by protecting ordinary citizens. True. 100% true. Literally, they're not economically competent. They never have been. All they want to do is push money into the pockets of their donors. That is it. And they want to maintain power, right? The actual party themselves want to maintain power, and they will pull whatever levers it takes to do that. And buddying up with the super rich and then leveraging their power is the best way of doing so as well. The past decade shows that medicine doesn't work. Exactly. The analogy is better if you make a doctor a massive dumbass. True, JTM. Also, welcome to the stream, Miss Haya. I hope you're doing well.
Carrying the burden. I agree absolutely with your point, George, and everybody else's, that those who are better off ought to carry a bigger burden. I am chairman of a company where many of my customers are at the bottom end of the income scale, and I worry about them. And of course, we're trying to do what we can to protect them, and that's what government is there to do. But we can't get away from the inevitability, if I might say so, of dealing with the problem that we have got today. And the gentleman asked a question, why do we have to put interest...
Also, I would like to point this out again, because I keep having to point this out. You can just run a budget deficit. That's the thing that you can do. You can just run a budget deficit. You don't need to make cuts. You don't have to necessarily raise that many taxes, right? As long as you're reducing the budget deficit over time, that's fine. You can just run a budget deficit. It's not going to destroy the economy to run a budget deficit.
Rates up. We have to kill demand at the moment because that is feeding inflation. And then
no, it isn't. Demand isn't feeding inflation. We have a supply chain crisis and an energy price spike. Demand is not. Demand has gone down, right? People, there is no demand because we pay all our money in bills and rent. There's no fucking demand. Well, how much lower does demand have to go to for these people, right? We're in a cost push inflationary period, right? Raising interest rates to curb demand is going to do sweet fuck all other than push more people into poverty. These people are economically, they're taking a nuclear warhead to our economy. I'm so frustrated with these people. Oh, but the country credit card, 100%. Like, I know, we can't just put this on the never never. Actually, I think you'll find we can put this on the never never. That's always a thing that we've always been able to do. I take you back again to the example of Japan and their 220% budget, so the 220% debt ratio to GDP, right? Japan have done it. Why can't we do it? No worries, good to have you in the stream, Messiah. What was it Ricardo said? People will be paid minimum subsistence wages and no more or something. True. Because they want to be able to pay you enough that you would rather be employed than on the street, right? That's because that's the lowest they'll let them pay, which is why minimum wages need to be a thing.
Get through that, i.e. the medicine, and you stop taking it, the doctor will say, right, well, you're going to get some exercise now, you'll feel better.
Can I just quickly say...
It
will be quick.
I would just like to say, I think it fucking demeans politics in this country that we have literal heads of industry making these bullshit analogies based on nonsense that do not in any way map onto the problem that they're doing, because they treat the public like we're fucking idiots, right? They treat all the public like we're stupid. They refuse to talk any sense to us or talk to us in real economic terms. They just want to make these bullshit analogies. A, to try and talk down to us and demean us, and B, to try and obfuscate the real point of the issue and make it seem simpler than it really is, to try and sell us a narrative that allows for a neoliberal platform to be able to cut shit. God, it's infuriating.
But Chris, you seem to have forgotten.
Again, it's the same shit that we get where it's like literally it's PragerU graphics as like frontline political discourse on the BBC. Just individuals just plodding around through capitalism land, making meaningless, mutually beneficial transactions over and over again, with no kind of like proper, understanding of all of the complex things that go into it. Ugh, drives me down the fucking bend.
That 6 months ago,
I've probably sworn too much to upload this segment now.
You were the government that put taxes up to the highest point in 70 years. And you put the tax burden up most on those on medium to lower incomes.
Yes, but then he was in the government that wanted to cut taxes, only briefly. It was like 2 minutes ago.
Then he was in the government that blew a hole in our finances, crashed our currency, crashed our borrowing costs, and now we're spending £18 billion just servicing our debt as a result of that, and that's money spent on nothing. This is what you did, and then 2 weeks ago, you stood up in the House of Commons repeatedly.
I mean, to be fair to the government, gilt yields are now back down to where they were before, right? So the money spent servicing the debt hasn't really changed that much, only to the gilts that were issued in that month period before they came back down again. So I don't really think that saying that, they've massively increased the amount we've got to pay servicing the debt is explicitly down to them right now, right? And that's fine. You can just service the debt. Who fucking cares? Run a deficit. Who gives a shit? Like, it's fine. It's just fine. You can run a deficit.
And spoke against those people who are advocating a windfall tax. The thing about a windfall tax is we do need to share the burden of taxation, but we're not just on people, but on businesses too. We need to share the load equally. There are some businesses, not because of strategic genius, cunning or guile, are making billions and billions of pounds simply because Vladimir Putin invaded another country, invaded Ukraine. Now, and
also a bunch of the money that was printed during the pandemic all just went to rich people because people aren't consuming on the back end, right? The people who would usually spend that money on kind of luxury purchase weren't spending, and they were just investing it into assets, increasing the asset value whilst the currency was debased by that, right? So they've just got comparatively richer than everybody else, even though poor people got the money, all end up in rich people's hands, right? It's not just an issue with the war in Ukraine, it's also an issue with the way in which the money was distributed over the course of the pandemic because we didn't tax rich people enough. Ugh. Most ordinary workers are sold the lie that welfare system and immigrants are to blame for them working ever harder for their spending power, but it's not. It keeps millions voting Tory. Very, very, very true. They keep getting told about how, it's just the economy is just like a household budget, right? When it really isn't. It never has been, exactly.
Countries should be sharing the load. We can't load it all on people on lower incomes, which is what's going to happen. And it's not just incomes that are going to be clobbered, because our public services are going to be stripped. Who are the people who are going to suffer the most when the police are being withdrawn from more poor communities? What's going to happen when people are adding to the queue for the 7 million people already waiting for treatment on the NHS? It is people on lower incomes that are going to get the worst of it. So let's spread the burden evenly. Let those who can afford to pay more pay their share, but not just people, businesses too.
We've already got a 65% windfall tax on energy companies.
And a quarter of it's given back.
That's going to deliver. I didn't interrupt you. It's going to deliver £20 billion. You mentioned police. We're about to hire 20,000 extra police officers, and you mentioned the currency movements.
You're not.
The currency and the government bond yields have gone.
I know, right? It's a mad shit from Paul James, isn't it? Absolutely fucking crazy, right? So I love question time because I enjoy getting angry at shit.
The audience
have gone back to where they were.
Because I don't. As you start with this list.
Well, what he said was accurate.
No. Listen, I'm not trying to disrespect what you're saying, but there's big sighs coming through as you go through.
Also, if you're enjoying the content, you can subscribe on Twitch to my stream for $3.99. You can type !donate to tip money rather than give Amazon half of the cut of the subscription payment, or you can drop bits. It's never ever expected, but it's always appreciated if you would like to subscribe or drop bits. It's very, very welcome. Because if you can't afford $3.99 to subscribe on Twitch, you can type !YouTube, and then you can become a member of my YouTube channel, which is only 99p. Stupid chips.
That list. I'm not
because if you cut 20,000 police and add 20,000 police, that's not 20,000 police. It's as simple as that. You cut 20,000 and you haven't increased it by more than 20,000. So we're not even back to where we were.
Well, yes, we will be. We're going to have more police. We're going to have more police than we started with.
All right.
Well, we know you can't add up.
Let's move on. Before we do, I want to tell you that we will be in Wells next week, the rather beautiful Somerset Cathedral city of Wells, and the week after that we're in Snape, near the Suffolk coast, also beautiful. So if you'd like to be in our audience, go to the Question Time website, you can follow the instructions there, you can come and be part of our audience, and incidentally...
When are you coming to Beeston? When are you going to come to Broxtowe? Come on, Question Time, come to my neck of the woods. Fucking give these people what for.
The list of all the venues where we're going to be are there, so you can see if we're going to be near you, and apply in advance. It would be great to see you. OK, let's take another question now. So many of you asked about this next topic. I wondered about starting with it, but given the news on the economy, I felt it might be slightly flippant. But I have to say, overwhelmingly, you asked about this. Can you guess what's coming? Georgina Rangecroft.
Should MPs be allowed to appear on reality TV shows?
Now, who could you be referring to? Obviously, the former Health Secretary.
I fucking love Matt Hancock at this point. I'm sorry. I know that he did loads of bad things during the pandemic, but he's just such a lolcow. I can't get over the fact he's the new Lembit Opik. He really is.
During the pandemic, Matt Hancock is going on, well, is already in the jungle as far as I know, and will be appearing on a television near you from Sunday. Chris?
No, they shouldn't, and that's why he's had the whip withdrawn.
But how can you... should something be done to stop him? I mean, Georgina's question is, should they be allowed to appear on it?
I mean, I don't think they should be allowed to. How you do that, I mean, not short of like chaining him to the green benches, I'm not sure how you'd go about doing that in practice. But no, I don't think he should be allowed. I mean, your question is a reasonable one. He's been elected by his constituents in, I think it's Suffolk, and no, he shouldn't be in Australia in the jungle.
So a fellow Conservative MP described him as, for going into the jungle, as an absolute prat. Would you agree with that description?
Well, I think.
Would you like to echo that?
I think the audience have registered their verdict. But clearly, going on this programme appears to involve doing embarrassing things on CCTV. So I can't imagine why they chose him.
Right. Oh, blimey. Peter, I mean, part of what seems to have got people's goat, and there's lots of hands up, so I'm going to come to you in a minute, is that he is taking, as far as we're aware anyway, he's taking his parliamentary salary as well as the fee for appearing on the programme.
It's the fact that he's away from Parliament when we're dealing with things that are affecting people's lives. He's there.
Fucking trench foot. Serves him right.
He's earning a lot of money, £400,000 for doing it, but he is an MP that was elected, and this is an incredible job, being an MP, and it's the people who are going to be turning up to his surgeries and he's not there. It's people who will be writing to him knowing that he's in a jungle somewhere else. He should be there. And yes, he's had the whip taken off him, but, you know, this is about people who don't take Parliament seriously. Boris Johnson has been lying on a beach for week after week. He should have the whip taken off him.
I mean,
we do have recesses.
Obviously, the former Scottish Labour leader, Kezia Douglas, she also went on.
She was wrong to do it, but that wasn't the Westminster Parliament. She was wrong to do it. You know, we shouldn't. We should take these jobs seriously. These are special jobs that we have with special responsibilities, and we do have recesses. So, yes, he shouldn't be there, and also it's insulting some of the excuses that he's using for it as well. I mean, he just shouldn't be there.
Yes, because that's the point, because he's talking about, amongst a number of things, being able to talk about dyslexia, which he now campaigns for.
I mean, I think Matt Hancock knows that his time as an MP is basically up regardless, because, of course, the Tories are getting wiped out. So he's making himself to be some kind of, like, celebrity figure for his own personal career moving forward. And quite frankly, more power to him, right? The less time he spends as an MP, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
And obviously, you are dyslexic. You've talked about that. Does that cut any ice with you?
I find it quite hurtful, actually, because, you know, for me, who has overcome barriers in life, I want things like
M9300 for the follow on Twitch. Thank you very much. Welcome to No Justice Stream. Hope you're doing well.
Dyslexia and other barriers other people have to overcome to be seen as gateways to success. I want them to be attached to success. So when I see Matt Hancock getting into a storm and suddenly throwing out dyslexia, I see someone who is using dyslexia and barriers and challenges as a shield. I see someone who is attaching dyslexia to failure. And that, for me, is hurtful. I think he is wrong to go there. I think he's wrong to throw that excuse out there. If you want to champion dyslexia and other challenges people face, well, there's a great place called Parliament to do it, where you can actually make laws that make things better for people. That's where he needs to be.
The man in the green shirt with the poppy, yes.
Yeah, I've no doubt he's going to be a fantastic celebrity. We all remember him trying to squeeze out a tear on TV when he was talking about the COVID vaccine. He's also got a book out to sell. No respect for the man.
Right. The man in the pink shirt here.
I think the irony with this particular situation is that the public get to decide whether they keep him there or not.
It's like an early election, if you like. Yes, the woman there.
Well, that's amusing. We're going to have more... The public are going to have a greater say whether Matt Hancock is in the jungle or not than they are about whether Rishi Sunak is Prime Minister or not.
Councillor, you're wearing a dark top, yes, with a white T-shirt.
Yes, I just wanted to say, you asked how would you get rid of him given a choice. Surely, if you work for an employer and you bring them into disrepute by your actions, can you not dismiss him that way? Not that it would be difficult to bring your party into any further disrepute anyway, but I'm just saying that is a way out.
Well, the thing is, it's actually, if you're a Conservative MP, you have to be convicted of an offence, you have to be suspended from the House of Commons by the Standards Committee for 10 days, or convicted of an offence under the Parliamentary Standards Act. There's very specific rules, but if you just think, I don't like what you're doing, and it doesn't come under, correct me if I'm wrong, Kristen, it doesn't fall into any of those categories, then actually you can't...
True, JDM, right? How getting, like, all those care home deaths, that wasn't enough for removal of the whip. But spending 10 days out in Australia, instant gone. Low battery, rude.
Again,
but he's getting paid for a job and he's not able
yeah, why is Chris Pincher still there? Why does Chris Pincher still have the whip, but Matt Hancock loses it for I'm a Celebrity? What fucking nonsense is this shit?
do that job while he's away. So he's skiving, really, isn't he?
Well, you might say so. I couldn't possibly comment. He claims he's going to have some kind of hotline to his constituents, should it be required. I'm not entirely sure how that will work. George, I mean, just looking at this more broadly, MPs have second jobs. Don't all shoot me down. I'm just putting a point of view. Is it that significantly different?
Yeah.
I'm giving it a go.
I really don't want to dwell on this one for too long. I don't think it's even newsworthy. I think it's an embarrassment. I think it's an insult.
Well, just to say, we reflect what the people here want to ask, and lots of them want to talk about.
Of course, yeah. It's a talking point, and that's it. It's ridiculous.
Zanny?
So I think the main reason he shouldn't be doing it is because he's doing it in parliamentary time when he should be working for his constituents.
But as I say, and I'm not trying to draw the comparison,
you're right. MPs have second jobs, and if in his own time he wants to go off and be on the show and be a prat, fine. But the reason I think it is wrong is because he should be there for his constituents. More broadly, we are kind of torn in this country because we've long thought that being an MP is somehow a kind of amateur thing that you combine with doing another job.
True.
And if we think that's wrong, then we should professionalise politics more. We should give people the resources to run parliamentary offices and do all of that. And then it's OK not to have a second job. I have some problems with some of the second jobs that MPs have. I actually think being a prat on a TV show is possibly less bad than, lobbying for companies. So I think in the grand scheme of things that they do... Yeah, but there are some things that are not sort of quite on the edge of that. Some of the things that MPs do and no one worries about are actually quite problematic, I think. So if you want to move away from that, which I would be in favour of...
I mean, people were interested in that shit, right? I understand us as kind of incredibly politically motivated people, we see it as nonsense, right? In the same way that I mostly viewed Partygate as a bit of nonsense, really. I thought Partygate was the less important thing compared to Chris Pincher or the crony contracts or all of that kind of stuff, what have you, right? But the public, they were fucking mad shit over... They were crazy. They were so angry over Partygate when I was like, well, I mean, it's bad, but it's hardly the worst thing the Tories have done. But, the public have a different set of conditions for when they'll start deriding politicians than we do. And whatever. Like, that's how it is. That's how it is.
Then have a more professionalised being an MP. But there's one thing that you lose from that, which is that I think some MPs who have, whether they're in the healthcare system or whether they're lawyers, they bring a sense of connection with the rest of the country and what real people in real jobs are doing. And I think we would lose that. So there is a real trade-off here.
Okay. Woman in the front here in the green top.
I really think that this is just another example and sum up all the failures of the government, one after the other, consequently for the past 5 years, I think. I would like to say he should be in Parliament. He's been elected by his constituency. He should be there working for them. Going on a show like in the jungle, he should be doing it in his own time after he's finished to do his work as an MP. But he has promised that time to his constituents and he should be there. So this to me sums it all up. There is no talent in this government at all. I really feel that the failure...
Are you including Chris in there?
Yeah, I'm talking to Chris as well. I think that there is no talent whatsoever in this Conservative government. One after the other has been an absolute shamble, failure after failure. And in all of this, really, leadership has been completely missed. I really miss, in the sense, Gordon Brown, because I could actually see the leadership in him sometimes. Much more than this government.
I'm tempted to say now, tell us what you really think. But
they've been baying for blood at basically every question time since the fiscal event. We're really seeing this public shift away from this pro-Tory orthodoxy. I wonder why they're trying to push so many of the political lines that the Tories use on the BBC to try and move Labour across to them, to try and take the mantle of the centre-right no-nonsense party. I miss Gordon Brown banter timeline. I mean, Gordon Brown's certainly the best prime minister that we've had since Callaghan. Who's been a better prime minister than Gordon Brown? You can't name one since Callaghan, right? Callaghan was the last good PM apart from Gordon Brown. And Gordon Brown was, like, he was Blairite, he was a third-way neoliberal, but he had some good ideas. He at least knew what he was doing, and he didn't try and run a huge amount of fucking racist shit like Blair did. He didn't start any wars. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, unfortunately.
Just out of interest, I mean, I say we had so much from you on this particular subject, and it was pretty clear the way it was going. Is there anyone here in the audience, and don't be deterred about putting your hand up if you do feel like this, who thinks, you know, maybe it's not great, but actually I'm just not that bothered?
I mean, yeah, true. Like, the worst part is when he got called out for it and then tried to apologise about, like, nope, she was bigoted. She's bigoted, like, talking about where Eastern Europeans are flocking from. Duh, Eastern Europe, you fucking moron. Where else do you think Eastern Europeans be flocking from, you fucking thixicle?
You know, frankly, yeah. OK, the man there in the blue shirt. There's a couple of you. Man in the blue shirt.
Yeah, so I mean, while he's obviously doing something which is just for his own gain, but he's got the ability to at least talk to people and change their opinion of him. So while it's not a good thing necessarily, he's actually going to be out there, and people might actually know him a little bit better than all the stories they've got. So I know that doesn't benefit us, but I'm saying it does give a different opinion of his character.
OK. Stuart, what do you think of it?
Listen, I don't want to say much. George, I think, said it. I think it does not pass the smell test, right? He should look himself in the mirror and say, is this what a parliamentarian who's got bigger responsibilities should be doing?
I mean, don't forget, of course, Nadine Dorris did, and then she became Comtesse.
Listen, I'm not supporting any of these people. At the end of the day, we know perfectly well why he's done it. He's done it for the money. And actually, I'm with you, you know, Peter, just dress it up as saying, I want to go and talk to dyslexics. It's just a joke.
Right. OK, I think we've covered that subject. For now, I'm going to move on and take another one, which is from Mark Jenkins.
With the number of people arriving in the UK by small boats reaching record levels, is our current asylum system in crisis?
Well, the answer to this question is absolutely yes, and it's in crisis because it's being underfunded, understaffed, deliberately so to be able to create a migrant crisis issue so it can be played for politics. That is the hot take for this particular question.
Let's just remind ourselves what the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has said about...
If we were processing asylum claims as fast as we were in, say, 2002, I wonder who was in government then maybe there wouldn't be this issue. And we literally have an extradition agreement with Albania, right? If there's this huge problem with Albanian economic migrants who don't meet the threshold for asylum, get their asylum claim processed, get their appeal processed, right? And then they'd already be back to Albania by the, you know, in double quick time. But the Tories are intent on turning this into a racism issue, so they've deliberately underfunded it to create a quote-unquote migrant crisis. Just doing it to myself then, my own little logo, migrant crisis, bunny ears. They're creating this migrant crisis issue to be able to sway the racist voter, right? They can't win on the economy anymore, so they're going to have to win on the culture, they have to win on the fascism shit, right? They have no other choice to do so. And so if they actually put the funding into the asylum system, which, to be fair, most people do pass through. I think with Albanians, their pass rate is 53%. Overall asylum seeker claims are at 76%, but Albanians is 53%. Then all the people with genuine asylum claims we'd be able to take in and then give them the asylum that they need. And the people who didn't, they'd be back in Albania because we have an extradition agreement. I don't agree. I don't think they should be extradited, right? I think we should give them settled status and let them just live and work in this country and contribute to society. But that's not what the rules say at the moment. The rules say that if you're not an asylum seeker, then you go back to Albania. But that would also fix this problem, right? There are multiple ways to fix this problem. That's one way to fix this problem. I could do it either way, but both of these ways involve making sure that the asylum process goes through quickly. And we're not going through the asylum process quickly because it's been deliberately underfunded and understaffed and underprepared because the Tories want to use it as a political football.
About that, she has said the system is broken, illegal migration is out of control, and she also talked about an invasion on our south coast. That's how she described it. George.
The question the gentleman asked is the asylum system in crisis. It would appear that the Home Office's capacity to deal with the applications that it's receiving has reduced. I believe the Home Office is not doing the best job of processing the applications that are coming through. But in terms of the language of invasion and scourge that has been used by the Home Secretary, this is language that justifies violence against asylum seekers, against refugees. It is completely devoid of its global context. There are real long-term forces that drive migration from the same parts of the world, the poorest parts of the world, the parts of the world where we get cheap labour and cheap resources to allow us to live comfortably. So the system that continues to drive that migration definitely is broken. But the system that Suella Braverman has been beating her chest about, that has been in the hands of Conservatives for 12 years now. So who broke it?
Peter.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, the system is not working. Mark is right to put it in those terms. But hopefully, when we come to Chris, he'll explain that the system is broken. I hope he will explain who broke it. Now, let's just look clearly at what does work when it comes to migration, when it comes to people who seek refuge in our country. The first thing that works is actually supporting people in country. Development work, sometimes military support. When you're looking at Afghanistan, when you withdraw those things, people sometimes flee.
Yes,
the second,
fairness,
let me just finish the point.
When there are wars going on, UK government's not be able to stop wars.
What keeps people, what supports people to stay at home is supporting them at home in development work and sometimes with military support as well. When people do leave and they travel through multiple countries, what works secondly is working with those countries to support people to stay where they are or to redirect and support them and have a very clear pathway forward that is a functional way forward. When people get into boats and come across, or they get to the channel to start coming across, then you have the third challenge that we have. The only thing that deters people from coming across in the channel is knowing that there is a functioning system at the other side, and they will be treated fairly but very swiftly, and those who do not pass the legal test to remain are returned rapidly. It is the only thing that deters people making that case. Now, the number of people who are making that journey across the channel...
What also deters people from travelling over in a small boat is if you give them safe and legal routes, which we could do, but we don't want to do it because that would stop us being able to demonise these people by forcing them into the small boats in the first place.
Has quadrupled in recent years, and in the same
time...
So
safe and legal routes exist for Ukrainians?
The number of people being processed has halved. So the system isn't working.
When the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, certainly talked in the summer about wanting to put a cap on numbers, Suella Braverman has again said she wants to bring numbers down. David Cameron famously talked about tens of thousands. What's Labour's position on numbers?
Well, I've just explained that Labour's position on numbers is making a functional system, so there are fewer people who actually want to cross the channel in the first place. Every single stage I've just described, Labour has a plan for. Sort of returning development support,
do you have an idea in mind of what kind of numbers you would find acceptable?
We would never... So things like Afghanistan will always happen. Things like Ukraine will always happen. So I can't say what the numbers of people who are going to seek refuge in our country is going to be in 2 years' time. But having a functional system means you can control the system, because I believe that people now believe that it is out of control. Now, I think the government here, they are getting things wrong. They think that actually being tough is what they want to do, but they're actually being nasty. They don't understand the difference between being tough and being nasty. What is tough is getting a system that actually works in place. So what we want to do when it comes to the criminals who are involved in this trade, because it's become a trade, because it is such a broken system, we want to scrap the Rwanda scheme.
Yeah, Braverman is just fucking... She's a genuinely evil person. I have no idea how, she's just fucking utterly insane.
Set up with the money a programme, a cell within the National Crime Agency that can root out and tackle the criminality. We will work with our partners abroad to arrest people who are involved in this trade abroad, and we will do so if they ever set foot on our soil here and they're engaging in criminal activity. We will give them the resources to arrest...
The only reason that they're engaging in criminal activity is because drugs have been criminalised. Right? Like, if we had legal drugs in this country and followed, the shining example of countries like Portugal, which have seen drug crimes decrease in response to the improved legality of drugs and recreational drugs at the very least, there wouldn't be the black market for these criminal gangs to exploit in the UK.
Arrest them here and make sure that trade is shut down.
Let's hear from our audience. The man there in the front in the blue shirt.
This isn't meant to sound flippant, but I had a wonderful holiday in Albania this summer. And I have to tell you, a sample of one I know, but when you look at the people that are coming from Albania and how many individuals that are coming, and I don't see the issues, or I didn't see the big issues in society in Albania, but it won't work if you start poking people in the eye, the Albanian Prime Minister in the eye. You want to get him on side so you can get these guys back to where they should be.
Absolutely.
The woman there.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Instead of sending them back to Rwanda or Paraguay or somewhere, why don't we put them to work while we're finding out if they're allowed to stay here? I'm sure there'll be lots of skills involved in these people, and we could actually put them to work. Nobody's even thought about that. We just cage them in a prison.
Just fucking give them settled status. We don't need to... We need more population. We need economic growth. Population increase is an easy way to do this. Just give them settled status. Let them work. It'll be good. It'll be good for the economy.
A very good point, if I might say so. It's one of the nonsenses that we have these people sitting here. We're paying £7 million a day to keep them in hotels, and we don't let them go to work. There cannot be a way that you cannot say, here is an identity card, go out, report every week, and come back. In the meantime, go and earn some money, give yourself some self-respect, and add something value to the community, and prove why you should have a right to stay here.
Yes.
But let's just go back to the basics. I'm not attacking you, Peter, because I think your party's doing some quite good things at the minute, if I might say so.
And that's a Conservative peer saying that to you.
But I think we should get away from this playground chat. It's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. Because I could take you back 25 years about immigration, and I think you might have been in charge. Not you personally, but your government. The immigration has been around for thousands of years. There's been immigration. People come here. Mostly it's economic migration because people who have got no food, no water, no education, no prospects for their children and no way of bettering themselves want to come to a better place. My father was an immigrant to this country.
I wonder why there's such a better place in the UK. It can't be due to all the imperialism, can it?
My mother was an immigrant to this country. I probably wouldn't get in today, or they probably wouldn't. So let's not knock it. We've done that. People have come here from persecution, political persecution. We've had people in the Pale of Russia. We've had the Huguenots. We've had the Ugandans. We've had the Syrians. We've had everybody here. Now we've got these people. Now, there's always in that migration people who are going to game the system. But we have to be, if we're a caring, rich country, and we're apparently the 5th largest economy in the world, even with our recession.
I think it's 6th now, but yeah.
6th. But we have to accept that it's part of our duty. The world is changing. The world isn't from 1945. It's not 1955. It's 2023. And we either live in this country and accept that's what it does, or we go somewhere else. But you can't stop it. Now, what I don't like the way that we're dealing with it. I don't like the rhetoric. I don't like the fact that, the Home Secretary is standing there and goes to Manston today in a Chinook helicopter. What sort of message does that send to anybody? Are we starting a war with these people down in Manston? How do we ever allow the person to do that? How could she speak with such dangerous language about a problem? And you made the point, and several others have made it, and the gentleman there made it. This will only be solved by negotiation. And it will only be solved by people sitting around a table as everything is solved, whether it's the Northern Ireland Protocol, whether it's the Rwandan situation, or the issue about Rwanda, or whether it's, the public order bill, which is going through the House of Lords at the moment. All has to be sat down and talked through very carefully. But we are a compassionate, caring country. We are a big country. We do need these people. And irony of ironies, having come out of Brexit, dare I mention the Brexit word, we are short of labour. We need these people. So I'm going to go a little bit further before I get shut up by Fiona.
I was thinking...
Yeah, but being nice to immigration is what got Suella Braverman fired by Liz Truss. Right? There's this political situation where the economy needs it, but neither party wants to say it because they want to appease the racists.
So you're trying to bring someone else in.
Many people who voted for Brexit are the people who are now complaining that they can't get their apples picked or their cherries picked or this picked. Lots of able-bodied people came to this country every summer. They did heavy work. They did pick our fruit. £75 million of fruit and veg rotted in our fields this summer, right? They did that work at wages that other people wouldn't do it for. And I know your point, George, is that maybe that's cheap labour, but we need the...
I mean, we have a minimum wage, Samson, right? Like, if we get more cheap labour into the country and we expand the labour force, that increases the amount of managerial positions available for native-born workers. It is... The economy expands as the population increases, meaning that there's more opportunity for people to be able to work, right? Like, usually I would somewhat agree with you in certain respects, in that usually greater competition within the workforce by increasing the labour force sometimes does drive wages down, but it can't at the moment because we are at full employment and wages aren't rising because people aren't collectively bargaining. Wages are already stagnant at a bargain basement. Record numbers of people who are working at or slightly above the minimum wage at the very least, or underneath the minimum wage in the case of the casualised labour force, for example, things like Uber Eats or whatever. We just need more people working in this country. And obviously, yeah, I mean, there will be, out of these people who are coming through, mishire is absolutely correct. It won't all just be people who are going to go work at Tesco. They're going to be people with skill sets that we can put to work in other sectors of the economy as well.
Labour. We've now got to a situation where we stop those people coming in, and we're now giving 6 months visas to people to come from Nepal to pick our apples, and people to come from Malaysia to pick our apples. How does that work? How do we end up in this mess? It's crazy. But immigration needs to be sorted. I'll shut up.
No, I completely agree with you. We need people. But I don't think having people come in small boats across the busiest shipping lane in the world in November is a safe way to do this. So we do have a problem there. And that problem, I think, has got a lot worse.
Annie, sorry to interrupt. That would be solved if we hadn't stuck two fingers up to our French and Dutch and German and Italian colleagues for 5 years, because they basically said, Monsieur, it's your problem.
Yeah, we're in violent agreement. This has got much, much harder, frankly, since Brexit. Because when we were part of the European Union, asylum seekers had to register in the first country they came to in the European Union, and they stayed there. Now they come, they want to be in the UK, they make that journey. We have to work with the French.
They didn't have to stay there. There was nothing saying that they couldn't then move on to the UK.
But they have to... to claim asylum, they had to go back to the first country that they came to in the EU. Once they've got asylum, then they can go anywhere in the EU. But now we have a situation where they want to come here, and you're completely right, we have to work with the French. The only way you're going to stop this growing number of boats is by working with the French. Instead, we have a policy which is kind of somewhere between incompetent and cruel. We need to process things much faster. The rhetoric about invasions is totally not helpful.
It's really weird, like, literally everyone across, like, the normal political spectrum of, like, the left and the right are all agreeing this policy is inhumane and needless, and there's just this 10% of, like, fashy people, and then, like, a huge swathe of, like, racists who, or just general kind of people in this country who don't really know how the asylum system works, who are fucking all over this shit, right? But the point at which you have, like, Labour leftists, people from The Economist, and fucking a conservative peer who's a director at Asda, all agreeing that this shit is nonsensical and pointless. Like, something's gone wrong. Something's gone really, really wrong. It's the Dublin Agreement, I believe, JDM.
We need to work with the French, process asylum seekers so that people who are able to be here can have their things processed quickly, and then they can join the labour force and work. We desperately need these people. And people who are not able to be here, economic migrants who we can't take all economic migrants. They are moved back very quickly. But Rwanda, Paraguay, whatever, these are non-solutions from a government that is really trying to be performative and not try and deal with the problem.
Fairly, so one last thing.
Oh, my goodness.
This gentleman had me nodding after. I never thought in my lifetime I would hear myself agreeing with the Albanian Prime Minister on Radio 4 this morning.
So when he said the government was acting like a madhouse, you were agreeing with that, were you?
I'm sorry, I will shut up.
OK. So, Chris...
Yeah, it seems like everybody knows that this government is full of shit apart from this government. How they're still polling at, like, fucking 28%, I have no idea. Who the fuck is voting for these people? I mean, who the fuck's voting Labour either? But, like, who the fuck is voting for anyone? Who's fuck is voting for the Tories? I have no idea.
You've got the Home Secretary saying the system is broken, migration is out of control. There's general unhappiness about it. I think that's a fair thing to say. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but, I mean, you were Minister for strategy when it comes to illegal immigration and for returns for 2 years. What was it, 2019 to 2021? What went wrong?
Yeah, well, let's try and sort of analyse the situation.
I mean, you kind of answered the question with the question, didn't you? You were in charge of it. Well, now we know why.
Taking it as a whole. So, I mean, Stuart is right. We are a generous country. We do look after people who are genuinely in need. And let me give you a few recent examples. When the war broke out in Ukraine, we immediately welcomed people to this country. And I think over 150,000 Ukrainians have now come. When the Afghan government fell last year, we brought over people. When Kabul fell, we've got the Arak and the Arab scheme. I think now about 23,000 Afghans have been welcomed into the United Kingdom, safely and legally. When there was that awful war in Syria, when Bashar al-Assad was murdering his own citizens, aided by Putin, we had a resettlement scheme, a legal resettlement scheme to bring Syrians from the edges of Syria and from camps in neighbouring countries legally and safely directly to the United Kingdom. It was mostly vulnerable people, so particularly women or people with health problems.
So just to stop you going through a list, but hang on just a second.
It's important
I appreciate that you are saying that there are things the government has done right and that where it has welcomed refugees. I totally take that on board. But nonetheless, you've got the Home Secretary saying the system is now broken. Yeah. Was it broken when you were partly responsible for it, or has it all gone...
Well, I think it's been
pear-shaped since then.
I think it's been developing for a while. I mean, in addition to all of those...
Well, you can tell us what's like from the inside.
Yeah, no, I'm about to. But in addition to that, last year we've issued about 1 million visas for those people and students and workers. So we are welcoming
a lot of
people. So we've got these legal routes, both for work, for students and for genuine refugees. You've then got the people who cross the channel on small boats. Now, the nationality mix has changed. Albanians are currently the predominant nationality. A number of European countries, for the reason the gentleman said, just say Albania is a safe country full stop. You just can't claim asylum at all from Albania. For whatever reason, they've chosen to come here on these small boats. They're in a safe country already. France is a safe country, obviously. Whatever country...
You were the people who should have made the agreement with France. France has offered an agreement to try and be able to process asylum claims in France, and you completely fucking ignored them because you want to turn it into a political issue. This is a non-answer.
...come from originally. You could and should claim asylum in France or Germany if you're there. There's no need to make this dangerous journey. And we can't have a system where people make these dangerous and illegal journeys unnecessarily. So we've got to find a way of stopping these journeys. It is, I mean, she's right, the Home Secretary, it is out of control. I think it's so far 40,000 this year. It's causing enormous problems. We can't really absorb 40,000 people just turning up a year. I mean, it's just pretty much impossible to deal with in any kind of sense.
Yes, it is. We literally had 6 figures in 2002, and we processed them all without any of this nonsense.
Way, just from an operational perspective. So how do we go about welcoming people who have legitimate reasons, the ones I just mentioned a minute ago? I didn't even mention the guys from Hong Kong, but stop the illegal ones. And I think
what about this idea that Stuart's suggesting that And actually came from the Prime Minister of Albania as well. He said, look how Germany sorted it out. People came from Albania to Germany. The people who came illegally, we sent them back. The people who could work, while they were waiting to claim asylum or claim asylum, we gave them a job.
We have a deal with Albania, actually, despite the Prime Minister's remarks earlier, that was made, I think, last year, where we can rapidly return people to Albania. And I think that is being activated. No, it's been a lot faster than that. And by the way, since Peter has popped his head up, he talks about wanting to prosecute people for illegal offences. Yeah, when we took the Nationality and Borders Bill through Parliament, which
it's nowhere near any kind of records that we've had with regards to asylum claims. As I said, in 2002, we literally had 100,000 asylum claims. This is nothing in comparison.
Increase the criminal penalties for dangerous people smuggling. Guess who voted against the increased penalties for people smuggling? It was Peter and others in the Labour Party. When we were trying to deport dangerous foreign national offenders, we're talking about murderers and rapists back to their country of origin, not Rwanda. Who was it that popped up and claimed that these murderers and rapists shouldn't leave the country? It was the Labour Party. So I'm not taking any lectures from Peter, but the system has degraded under legal challenges over the last few years, and it does need fundamentally reforming because it's not working at the moment.
Let's hear a bit from our audience before I take another question. The woman here in the green scarf.
So firstly, I'd just like to point out that the basic question was the system broken?
Yes, it is broken.
And you've just tried to spin to us
no, it is broken.
a whole myriad of things of making us try to lose track of it. But it's not just the asylum system. I would say that the NHS system has been busted. I think the transport system has been busted. I think education is in failure.
Courts.
The court system is in absolute turmoil. Dare I pick up your point, Mr. Rose, and say how much of this, potentially, is down to Brexit? And given so many of your party...
It's fucking neoliberalism! I'm going to have an aneurysm. Shut up about Brexit, please. I hate this country.
Are prepared to stand up and say, oops, sorry, I made a mistake, I've changed my mind about something. Is there a possibility that the country may have changed its mind about the effects of Brexit too?
Definitely do.
Right. The man at the back in the yellow shirt. Right.
Missed the end of that. Potentially is down to Brexit. And given so many of your party are prepared to stand up and say, oops, sorry, I made a mistake, I've changed my mind about something, is there a possibility that the country may have changed its mind about the effects of Brexit too?
Right. The man at the back in the yellow shirt.
I think it's fair that Chris acknowledges the
Clearly I need a neoliberalism emo.
fact that there is a problem and the system is broken, but the problem is that he's not taking responsibility for who got us into the problem in the first place.
And is there... I mean, there's been a lot of criticism of the language that the Home Secretary used on this panel, as well as more widely. From some of the questions that came in this evening, I could see that not everyone was critical of that. Is there anyone in the audience who feels actually that she was right to say what she did? Yes, a woman there in the blue shirt.
They're coming here illegally, and there could be many criminals. You know, we don't know who they are.
And when she talked about an invasion, you felt...
Yeah, I mean, by that logic, you should deport all of the white criminals, fucking ship them off to Australia or some shit, right? Like, the likelihood of just random white people that you meet are the same as percentage just going to be criminal as people who are immigrating.
Yeah, that was the right...
It is an invasion.
That's how it seems to you?
Yeah.
OK. All right, the man behind you's hand suddenly shot up. Yes.
I think similar language was being used several decades ago when the large Asian community were exiled out of Uganda, came to the UK, and we look at their economic contribution to the UK economy, which has been immeasurable. But we're still using the same language then as we are now. We were wrong then. Are we wrong now?
OK. And George, of course, your parents are Ugandan, is that right?
My parents are Ugandan, yeah. It's just interesting, this question of scale, because what you get is that the potential threat that the lady spoke to is...
True, like, absolutely. Fucking Albanians selling us some Molly, that's based. Fucking random, like, Jimmy Savile types, no thanks.
It's inflated. I think less than 1/5% of this country is refugees. I think it's 0.18%. Public funds for that, 0.18%, are £38 a week per person. And over 1 million people in this country have no recourse to public funds. So, like, where is this threat that is suddenly overwhelming the country? I don't see it.
OK, let's take another question. We've only got about 7 minutes left. I want to try to fit this in. Dan Becker.
With the increased awareness for inclusivity in sport, should we be supporting the Qatari World Cup, considering their appalling human rights record?
Peter.
Well, I think fans should be able to go and support their team, and I think that's a non-political act. I think that representing, though, political parties and going is a political act. So I don't
What about
think...
the Welsh First Minister, Mark Drakeford? Of course, is Labour. He's going.
I wouldn't be going. The Labour Party here under Keir... Well, I am going to answer the question. I think Keir Starmer has said that none of our front benches are going. If I was Mark Drakeford, I wouldn't be going. But Mark has a very specific challenge that isn't elsewhere. He does represent a country, Wales. He's the First Minister. If he doesn't go, then the other deputies and other parties will go and represent Wales for them because they've said so on the record. So he is in a very specific situation. Now, I wouldn't be going and representing, but I understand the circumstances that he's put forward as his reason for going. Look, I'm pleased the Prince of Wales isn't going. He is the heir to the throne. He represents, the head of state as his son. I'm pleased he's not going. I'm pleased we're not having that kind of high-level political representation and royal representation. It matters. But fans, of course, them going and supporting England in our matches and other teams that are playing, that's a non-political...
True, 100%. Qatar should never have got it. Like, it's not a good venue. The only reason they got it is because they had the fucking money bags for FIFA. Was it Sepp Blatter who gave them, who awarded it to them? I don't even know. I don't know who even was FIFA president at the time.
Political act, but I think if you are going and your attendance can be interpreted as a political support, it shouldn't happen.
Stuart.
I think I broadly agree. I mean, we can't stop fans going. It's their sport. I think we should just do it in a low-key way with the politicians.
George?
I just want to remind everyone that I think 100 unaccompanied minors are still missing from UK hotels that they were placed in. So yeah, broadly, Britain should think about its track record in terms of what it deems appropriate. We have a very friendly relationship with the Saudis, who are, obviously it's not a like-for-like comparison, but there are a lot of reports of human rights abuses, migrant workers' rights abuses in that region. But I also take the point that it's footy and it's not political for a lot of people.
And what did you think of the Foreign Secretary's remarks, James Cleverly, when he talked about, encouraging fans to be respectful, talking about the fact that homosexuality is illegal in Qatar, and he was saying, with a little bit of flex and compromise, it can be a safe, secure...
Well, it sounds apologist. Sounds apologist to me. I wouldn't have said that. So, I don't know. Well, Chris, what do you think he meant?
I don't know. I mean, I don't. So I'd probably take a slightly different view, actually, to what James said. I think if somebody happens to be gay and goes somewhere, they shouldn't, anywhere in the world, feel they have to hide that because it's a basic freedom and a human right to be able to live how you want to live. And I don't think anyone should feel under pressure to do anything different.
And in terms of supporting the World Cup, politically or otherwise, should we be doing that?
Well, I think it's obviously a forum where world leaders are likely to congregate. I mean, we've already heard...
So will the Prime Minister be going?
I don't know, to be honest. We've heard Peter Kyle a second ago make the case why Mark Drakeford, as a representative of Wales, should go. You could obviously make similar...
He should go.
Well, you said you understood why he was going, I think. You were justifying...
perspective forward.
Yeah.
I said I wouldn't go.
No, you said that, that's right. But you explained why he was going and why it was useful from a Welsh sort of national perspective. And I can see why it might be useful for ministers of Western countries to go and to meet others and so on.
Do you think he should?
Who?
The Prime Minister, do you think he should go?
I think it's up to him. He needs to make a judgment about whether there are people there he needs to meet, and there's a range of diplomatic considerations to trade off. It's not a decision I have to make myself.
Yeah, we didn't get any ministers over in Australia representing England during the T20 World Cup, didn't we? This is sport. This is fucking sport racism.
Because I haven't been invited.
Okay. Man there in the blue cap. Yes, you sir.
I think this issue of the World Cup being held in Qatar, I think it is already like a non-issue.
It's a non-issue?
Yeah, it is a non-issue because recently I saw the interview by one of the Qatari leaders, and they say that everybody is welcomed in the country, but as long as you respect their culture, because they've got a different mindset there. So I don't think that...
Real hot take, though, cultural relativism is bullshit. I don't give a shit what your religion is or what your culture is. If you're homophobic, you're bad. Like, I'm sorry. I have a moral imperative to point out how bad that is, right? Based on my own kind of moral system, I'm not going to give you fucking a free pass because you're Muslim or some shit, because you adhere to some kind of Muslim doctrine. If you hate gay people, it's bad. Simple. That's just bad. I don't give a shit. Cultural relativism, fuck that shit. I don't give a shit. Leftists do this thing all the time about, like, with the cultural relativism, and it's bollocks. Fuck cultural relativism. Nonsense.
That is World Cup, I don't think it should be banned.
You don't think it's that big a deal?
Okay. I think everybody going there, should go like with an open mind that this is a different country. Otherwise, if you're gonna talk about like banning countries, then we end up banning many countries that I don't think that they're gonna have a chance to host this World Cup.
Okay, the woman here in the front.
avid football supporter, I find myself actually torn with the World Cup. Quite clearly, it's going to a country that has astonishing views on human rights, and as a queer woman or member of the LGBTQ, I will struggle to see players who I respect to the Premier League actually stand in a country and know that it's okay and feel it's okay to take away what we're supposed to be great about this country, and we're going somewhere that we're going to normalise crime, pain, and just in the name of a game, and it's supposed to be okay.
Sandy, we haven't got much time left. What are your thoughts?
So I think for me the biggest question is why on earth Qatar is hosting the World Cup in the first place. I think that's really that decision having been made, I do think there is something about supporting a British team. And politicians often go to places where there are terrible human rights records. And I think the important thing is to stand up for the kind of values that Britain stands for and make them very clear while you're there. But I'm leery about saying politicians should never go to places where games are held where there's a terrible human rights record. Because in the end, you're there to support and bolster the British team. And it's a loss to the UK if you're not going there. But so I think now it's happening there. I think it's actually OK that Mark Drakeford's going. I would make it a fairly low-key representation, but I think it's OK that they go. But then when you're there, stand up for the liberal values that Britain stands for.
Right. There's a number of you want to talk about it. I'm afraid our time is up. Our hour is gone. Thank you very much to the panel. Thank you to our audience here in Horsham. Very good to see you.
And I can't really complain about Qatar because I watched Labour Files, so, you know. But, yeah, I mean, I think the big issue is actually more about, you know, Gary Neville and Gary Lineker going and covering the World Cup. That's their fucking job, right? They get paid. They get, someone's gonna fucking cover it. Like, you know, the fucking Boers comic. You criticize society, yet you participate in society, etc. Right? The real issue is the fact they got given the World Cup in the first place at all. I don't really mind. I don't really care if politicians go either. Right? Like, I just wish there wasn't being hosted there in the first place because of FIFA. They're the real ones to blame. And I think that an overall boycott of fans is actually far more of an imperative because you want to be able to hit FIFA financially and hit Qatar financially by not giving them the ticket sales. I think that's far more important than whether or not one Gary Neville or one Mark Drakeford goes to Qatar to do it, right? Individual people going there fulfilling their job roles is far less impactful than if there was a nationwide, you know, boycott on tickets of actually going. Imagine, right, what would be a bigger message to Qatar, right? No BBC coverage or empty stadia. Right? That would be a bigger message personally for me. Because I think the Economist lady is actually right in that we go to countries with horrendous human rights records all the time, right? Like Donald Trump went to North Korea to try and sign a peace process, right? In the same way that, you know, people kind of castigated Jeremy Corbyn for saying, oh, you know, you said that Hamas were our friends. I'm like, yeah, well, how else do you expect to broker a peace deal? Going over and saying, I welcome the dignitaries from our friends in Israel and those bastards over at Hamas. Like, you're not going to get a peace deal that way, right? Like, you know, there are some things that you'll do, but even though you disagree with what a country does. But I think that an overall boycott of ticket sales is far more impactful than there being no foreign dignitaries or no Gary Neville. That's far more utilitarian concern as far as, in my opinion.